Hello, and welcome to the Morthunder YouTube channel. You may notice that there's a new member to the Morthunder family. We haven't picked a name yet, but you're gonna love him. Like, I already have tears in my eyes because he's just the cutest thing that I've ever seen. Okay, come here. Come here. Oh no. Oh, hello. There's Brunty. Okay. Hopefully this refocuses. If this doesn't focus, then obviously I'll get more footage later. But this is our new puppy. We rescued him from the Humane Society yesterday. And yeah, he's really sleepy because, like a lot of dogs at the Humane Society, he got kennel cough, and so, which is basically the equivalent of a human head cold. So he's a little sleepy, and I just took him to the vet, and we just gave him medication. But as you'll come to learn, this little fella has a cleft nose. So not necessarily a cleft palate, because his palate is intact, but he has a double nose. So his nose is basically cut into two pieces. And he has a huge gap in his teeth, which I will show you later. Okay, now that we have introductions out of the way, oh, you're so cute. Today in this episode, I'm gonna show you how to knit a custom sweater for any dog that you own or don't own, or any dog in the world. So, the first step, that's his little cozy coat. He keeps sleeping in it. Ooh, and if I don't pay attention, he'll probably creep over into the laundry basket, crawl into that coat, and fall asleep again. But hopefully he stays right here. Actually, I should probably let him do that. So quick. Step one, what you do is you're gonna measure your dog. Today I'm gonna be knitting a sweater for this little fella, and it'll probably only take 10 minutes because he's so small. Okay, I'm gonna scoop him up. I'm gonna put him in the laundry basket, let him sleep, but I will show you on Bronte how to measure your dog. So as you see, Bronte has her sweater on. This one is not the best fit of all the sweaters that she has. If you've ever seen her wear the really pretty neon one that she has that has blues and pinks and yellows, that one fits her much better, but I think it's in the laundry, and he's sleeping in the laundry, so I can't go and grab it. Anyway, so step number one, I made a diagram, and I'll find a way to get it to you. If you want, you can zoom in and you can pause it so that you can kind of get an idea of what this means. Hopefully, I can just attach the image over the screen right now. If not, then we'll figure it out. I'll make a link in the bio or something. So, well, not the bio, I'll make a link in the box. So, number one, you're gonna do measurement A, which is the neck. So right about where you want the sweater to begin, which obviously Bronte's sweater doesn't sit there because I made the ribbing too loose. So don't make the ribbing too loose, or else the sweater will slide down their back. So number one, measure their neck. This is measurement A. Measurement B. Bronte, come here. Come here, Bronte. Oh, this is cute. Let me show you exactly where he is. So he's just sleeping right there, and it's just the darnest thing. Okay, measurement B is going to be the widest point of your dog's bust, basically. Right about there. And then measurement C is going to be basically where you want their sweater to end up. Oh, I'm sorry, I just hit you in the face. So basically the ending point of their sweater. So depending on your dog's body type, likely they have a chest, right? That's where their ribs and organs and things are. And then it peaks up just a little bit. For Bronte, she has a really prominent chest and then a very skinny waist, so I have to do a lot of decreasing towards the end. Next, we're gonna measure from ideally where you want the sweater to begin to where their armpits rest in the back. So the coordinating part of the back, where the armpits go up. and that is going to be measurement D. And then you're so perfect. Next, you're going to go from the ending point of measurement D to where you want the sweater to end in the back, so in the hindquarter area. You're such a good girl. You're doing such a good job. Okay, and then the next one, so that was measurement E. Measurement F, no, A, B, C, D, E, F, yes. F is going to be the distance between their paws. So basically what you're trying to do is just make sure that they have enough room for them to do all their playing, all their yoga activities. If your dog wants to take up some Tae Bo in his hip sweater, you gotta accommodate for his arm reach. And then measurement F, yeah, I did just reference Tae Bo. You're welcome. Measurement F is gonna be basically your dog's bicep size. So just the circumference, and make sure that it's not too tight, because if it's better to be loose than tight. Because if it's too tight, then you're gonna have a really hard time bending their wrist to put it through, and then you'll have to go claws first, which is really challenging because the claw can get caught in the knitting, and it can be really hard to put the sweater on your dog. If you have a larger dog, obviously they have huge paws, and you're gonna have to go claw first anyway. But note to self, make sure that you don't make the armholes too small, and make sure that you don't cast off too tightly. Because when I made this sweater for her, I had to rip it back to the ribbing 3 times and cast it off 3 times, because the first 2 times it was too tight and she got really claustrophobic when I was trying to put it on her. And you guys, it was so devastating because it was around 11:30 at night. I was in our secondary loft knitting away. I finished it. I climbed downstairs. I pulled her out of bed because she was sleeping with Ethan, and I tried to fit her sweater on, and she was actually really excited about it. And then she was like, it's not working. It got like tight around here. And she was like really dazed and bothered. And so I had to take the sweater off, go downstairs, re-knit it. I did it again, failed again, did it a 3rd time. It finally fit. And then I just let her go to bed, because that's what you do when you harass your dog 3 times for a sweater fitting when they are trying to sleep. So now that you have all of your measurements, what you want to do is take the yarn that you plan on using and the needles that you plan on using, make a quick little swatch so that you can get an idea of what your gauge is. So for instance, I'm using worsted weight yarn, but I'm actually using really small needles. So I'm using about size 2 knitting needles, because I want to use kind of a cheaper yarn, a thicker yarn, because I don't want to use like skinny expensive yarn, because it would be wasted on him. Not her, him. And so my gauge is quite tight. And so for 4 inches, I checked it out. My gauge is going to be 20 stitches wide by 26 rows tall. And this way, since you know how many stitches and rows per 4 inches, you can do a little bit of math, and you can scope out the landscape of when you need to, you know, how many you need to cast on, how many stitches you need to have at the widest point, how many stitches you need to have in the smallest point. So now what I'm going to have you do is take your measurements, and then like for measurement A, mine was 7 inches because he's very little. And so figure out how many stitches for 7 inches. And then probably for me, I'm gonna add a few because ribbing is tighter than stockinette stitch, which is what I plan on doing for his sweater. So I'm gonna add a few, cast them on, and then knit about 1 inch of ribbing for their little neck, because essentially it's better for them to have a turtleneck than for their sweater to be like this, because then they look really dumb. Bronte, come here. Because her sweater will just fall back down and she looks really silly and risque. So, yep. Figure out your cast on number, cast on your stitches, make 1 inch of ribbing, and then you can move on to the next step, which is, well, actually you don't need to do that yet. So figure out how many stitches per calculation you need for measurements A, B, C, and then for measurements D and E, Figure out how many rows long that is, or you can always just measure it as you're working. That actually makes a little more sense. Do that. Don't do the math. Save yourself the math. Always save yourself the math. Next stop, figure out how many stitches around your G measurement is and how many stitches wide your F measurement is. For instance, little brother, his F measurement between arm to arm is 3.5 inches, which means that I'm gonna do, so 4 inches is 20 stitches, right, for my gauge. So I'm gonna do less than that. I'm gonna do, I think, 18, 16, I'll do the math. I can't do it with my brain. And then for G, that is gonna be your stitches around. So it gets kind of tricky and you'll understand later on, but yeah, G, we'll just have to figure that out when we get there. You don't have to worry about measurement G now. So, like I said, cast on that number of stitches, do 1 inch of ribbing if you have a small dog, do 2 inches of ribbing if you have a larger dog, like a Labrador Retriever or a Collie or something. If you have a ginormous dog, use your own judgment. I'm sure 2 inches will be fine because that's a lot of ribbing. I mean, if you have a Collie, you might even want to do 1.5 inches. But use your judgment depending on what style you want to do. You could do 6 inches and then fold it over and it could be a cute turtleneck for your dog, which I have contemplated doing before. It's not a bad thing. More warmth. Okay, so we cast on, we do the ribbing, knit until you get halfway of the measurement for measurement D. So I'm going to join along. Boop, 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 ba-doo. So I'm just gonna cast on, okay, you're 7 inches, which means 20, and then 15, 35. I'm gonna cast on 40 stitches. And I'm just using a regular long tail cast on. If you're feeling fancy, you can do a provisional cast on. I won't stop you. 40. So I'm gonna do a magic loop. I could really go for some beef jerky right now. That wasn't random. I had some beef jerky earlier and I want some more. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of ribbing up in here. So since I'm doing a boring part, I might as well just talk. And hopefully you're knitting too. That would be exciting if we're like knitting buddies right now. Dog names. So I'm thinking I need to do a 2-syllable B name for little brother because it would be Bronte and blah blah. So if you have any suggestions, it's already too late because I've already posted this video and it should be Friday by now, which hopefully I've named my dog by then, or else little no name is gonna be just the saddest little thing. You just wait till you see a picture of him. Maybe I'll just put some pictures in right now so you don't have to watch me make ribbing. Turns out he's about 18 weeks old. His baby teeth are falling out and he's bleeding a little bit, and he has a cleft all the way down his nose. Fortunately, his palate is intact, which is really, really good for eating and things. And his cranial bone, I think that's what she called it, that goes down from your forehead, basically. The bone that keeps his brain in is intact. The vet just said that I should make sure to avoid any sort of head trauma. That's specifically what she said. Head trauma. Or else his brain could come out of his nose, is basically how she said it. She's like, you don't want to see brain matter coming out of his nose. Yeah, so yeah, he's definitely a special dog, really, really cool, very cute. And yeah, she's like, due to his little, what was it? She's like, he's definitely gonna be a very unique dog. He has some genetic specialness about him. And she was like, yep, but yeah, it's a cool dog. And I said, I said, did I adopt a bad dog? And she was holding him in her arms, and he's literally so small. He's like the size of this skein of yarn. And she goes, no, you did not adopt a bad dog. And it was very scary, but it made me feel very good that I adopted a decent dog. So he's just goofy looking, which I love. He kind of looks like Tuna. Hopefully I can put an image right here. Actually, I know for a fact I can. He looks like Tuna, the little Chiweenie that everyone loves. So we need to come up with a really charming name so that I can make him an Instagram page and make him a celebrity or something. If you're rolling your eyes, don't worry, I'm rolling my eyes too. But you don't know that feeling until you get a really interesting creature and you're like, I kind of want to share a picture of this dog every day because I think that people would really like him. And that's why like 1 million people follow little Tuna, because he's the cutest damn thing you ever saw. So, okay. I'm going to stop at a little under 1 inch of ribbing because he doesn't need that much. Oh golly, he is so cute. One more side. Also, we need to come up with a hashtag so that I can find all of your sweaters. If you learned how to make a dog sweater with me, use the hashtag Morthunder Dog Sweater Club. And that's where we'll put all of our dog sweaters. And you can show me how it turned out. Right now, I'm only showing you how to knit a dog sweater in one color because there's no need to make this overly complicated with color work, but I will hopefully give you some instruction on how to try and implement some color work. Because as you can tell, Bronte's sweater that she's wearing right now is a sanguine sweater that has some really, really fun color work on it. Okay, so I'm gonna start working in just regular stockinette, and like I said, I'm gonna knit half of my measurement for measurement D. So you're basically just knitting the neck part. And yeah, if your dog has a short or a long neck, you may want to try it on occasionally to see if you need to increase earlier. This is just my suggestion. Okay, so now that I have finished step 1 with knitting half of measurement D, I'm going to do my first increase. So with little brother, his fullest size goes from 7 inches around to 10 inches around, which is really only a difference of about 20 stitches. So you're going to be doing 2 increases. Hopefully, if you have to do 3, that's fine. Just divide up your total amount of stitches that you need to increase. Divide that by 3 so that you can do even increases and then evenly disperse them. So for me, I'm only doing 2 increases. I'm going to knit 5 stitches and increase 1, which will increase by 8 stitches. So I need to increase 20. So total, which means divide that by 2 is 10. So I need to increase 10 right now, which means I'm going to knit 4 and then I'm going to make a stitch. 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to do the make one left method where you pick up a post in between 2 stitches, put it on your left needle, and then knit into it, because that's a really seamless way. Most of the time, if you have knit a sweater pattern of mine, I like to do the make one using the backward loop cast on, which is basically you're casting on with 1 string. And the reason that I stick to that one is because it's better for color work, because I do a lot of stripes in my color work sweater designs, and if you do a make one using a backward loop cast on, it is a lot more hidden when you're doing stripes. Otherwise, you would have the post from the previous row coming up and it would create a little hiccup in your color work basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4, pick up the leg, knit into it. Okay, now that I've done my increase row, I'm going to continue to knit the full measurement of measurement D, which for me is a whopping 3 inches. I'm so excited to share with you how freaking adorable he is. He is so precious. If you're knitting a sweater for a really large dog, this is gonna take you some time. Don't get discouraged, it'll definitely be worth it. There is something absolutely magical about putting a sweater on your dog for the very first time, like fresh off the needles, and having them just like run around and play in it indoors. It doesn't feel good when they play around in it outside because they're gonna get it dirty. But especially if you have a matching sweater, oh, it feels so good to put their sweater on them for the first time and you're like, we match now, we're best friends. Which I never thought that I'd be that kind of person that would want to make a matching sweater with my dog. But I never had a dog until about a year ago, so I actually just wasn't even thinking about owning a dog in the first place because I thought I was a cat person. But you can be both. You can be a cat person and a dog person. And there's nothing wrong with only being one believer on one side or the other. It's all good. The knitting needles that I'm using are the ChowGoo interchangeable, I think red lace, or not lace, but red twist or something. So the cable is red. It is a, I want to say stainless steel, but I'm not sure. It's some kind of metal that's twisted really, really finely, and then it's covered with a thin coat of red plastic. But it bends really nicely. So the alternative is just plastic cords, and plastic cords have a tendency of kinking, whereas, you know, metal cords can kink too. So the tightest knitting that I've ever had to do where I've been really concerned about kinking my cords is when I'm doing a sweater from the bottom up. So the first few rows when you are, you know, meeting all your pieces together, you have your torso and you have your 2 sleeves. When you are rounding those corners, only a person that has made a bottom-up sweater like can know how just tight things can get, and that's the only time that I've really kinked my cords, and that's when I was using my Licca interchangeable knitting needle set, and that was kind of a bummer. But I've heard good things about putting your knitting needle cords in hot water, that can make them soften them up a little bit. I haven't tried it yet because as soon as I tried out a pair of ChowGoo knitting needles, I just went and bought myself the interchangeable set online because I'm not goofing around here, guys. I take knitting very seriously. But I still have my Licca set because they're very pretty and I like wooden needles. Because sometimes you just want to use wooden needles, sometimes you want to use metal. Honestly, I haven't had metal needles. I haven't used them in like 5-6 years. So this is kind of interesting, picking up knitting with metal again. I don't know, I think the reason I kind of got into wooden knitting needles is because I was making a lot of beanies for the last like 5 or 6 years and releasing a lot of like beanie patterns. That's basically what I was known for, was beanie patterns, and then I got into garments and dog sweaters, I guess. So I definitely recommend the ChowGoo interchangeable knitting needles. As of October 30th, 2019, they are exceptional needles. Dobby is a free elf. Good boy. He's a very good boy. Okay, so fit test. It fits little No Name very well. He's making little creepy noises because he wants to go back to sleep. Okay, so you've knit your measurement right before the front paws where you want your sleeves to start. And now I'm going to take this off of him and put him back in his little Patagonia jacket. Good boy. Oh, good boy. He's giving me sad eyes. He's like, please stop doing that. Cordially yours, little no name. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I am going to, okay, so right now you have the choice of making this the center point of your sweater. If it's really important to you to have the starting point be the center, it doesn't change anything, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my first stitches for his little leg on hold, and then this is going to be the F measurement, and I'm going to work the F measurement back and forth. So I'm going to put these stitches on scrap yarn, I'm going to work that chest measurement, then I'm going to put his other sleeve stitches on scrap yarn, I'm going to work the back, and then I'm going to join the F measurement, which is the front, and the back measurement, so both have been worked up by 1 inch. I'm going to cast on some stitches for the top of the sleeve, because essentially what you're doing is you're making a hole. Let me grab Bronte's sweater and I'll be able to explain it a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna do a really mean thing. Oh, hello, brother. Okay, take your sweater off. Good job. Good job. Okay, so essentially, as you can see, for my dog's body type, it goes small, big, and then a little bit smaller, because she goes small, big, and then a little bit smaller. Right now at this point, we have gone from the neck down to right before the arms. So what I was saying was, you're gonna put these stitches on hold, you're gonna work 1 inch up, you're going to put these stitches on hold, you're going to work 1 inch up, and then you're going to put these stitches and then your back stitches on the same needles. So essentially you have created a little hole. And what you're going to do later is you're going to pick up those stitches that were put on hold, pick up stitches around this circle, knit them up, and do a little bit of ribbing and cast them off. But until that point, you have your F measurement and then your back measurement. So you have the back, you'll pick up some stitches, the F measurement, and then you'll pick up some stitches, and then it's easy peasy from there. You'll just work in the round and increase and decrease when it's necessary. Yeah, you'll likely need to increase about 1 inch after you've, or like right even when you get to the top of this part, like after you finish that portion, that inch portion, to accommodate for the arms. Just, it kind of depends on the breed of your dog and how big their bust is. So yeah, it's basically just a human sweater, but the arms are on the front and you have to contour for their curvature. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, his arms are 4 inches around. Yeah, so I'm gonna take 5 stitches because that equals 1 inch for me, for my gauge. I'm gonna put them on hold, and that is gonna be the width of his little armhole. So essentially his armhole will be 5 stitches wide by 1 inch tall by 5 stitches that get cast on when we add everything into the round by 1 inch tall. So it'll be a little box that'll be 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, and then we'll work it later. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I just took 5 stitches and I put them on spare yarn, and I'm gonna tie a little knot so that they don't fall off. Okay, and then my F measurement from arm to arm was a whopping 3.5 inches, which means that it's just shy of 4 inches. Okay, so I need 15, 16, I'll do 17 stitches for his tiny little F measurement. At this point, you will need to break your yarn, boop, to start knitting that F measurement. Yeah, F for front. And I'm just using Red Heart Super Saver because I bought it because the color is really pretty. This is called Medium Time. I called my sister and I said, what color do you think I should make little fella's sweater? And she goes, something masculine. Which is really funny because it didn't even occur to me that I should even make him something masculine. Like, I don't know. He's just the cutest. Ooh. Okie dokie. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That doesn't feel right, but it is what it is. It is what it says. That means that he's like half arms. That's what his body is. And since I'm here, I'm going to put those other arm stitches on hold right now because I can. You don't have to do this now. You can do it later if you want. I mean, you won't skip this step. Like, you won't accidentally forget to do it. It's just, I'm here, so I might as well just do it. La, 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 la. Okay, so that is 17. Something about that I just don't like. I'm gonna have to wake him from his slumber again to kind of remeasure that because I don't want him to have a weird fitting sweater. So, okay. Hi, little brother. I know. I was right. 3 inches. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's a difference of 2 stitches. You know what? 2 stitches is all it takes to make it fit just a little bit better. But 2 inches is all it takes to make it fit just a little bit worse. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at the original because it's better for him to have a little too much in the boob area than to have it be too tight and then keep him restricted. So I'll just remember to add more stitches to the back side after I do this part. So, like I said, this is measurement F, this is the front, so I'm going to knit 1 inch. And depending on how big your doggy's arms are, you want to knit, so measure their bicep and divide it by 4, and then that's how tall you want to make it. So you're just knitting back and forth, knitting forward, purling backward, knitting forward, purling backward.
The last time that I was working on a dog sweater, I was watching this movie that I'm pretty sure it had Bradley Cooper in it, and it was about this guy that was really old, and I think he had like a fatal illness or something, but he was super duper duper wealthy, and so he heard about this experimental transaction kind of a thing where you can literally take your soul, well, literally, figuratively, it's a movie, you can take your soul and transfer it into a body that they had like pre-made, right? And so the guy pays all this money, gets his soul transferred into another body, but he keeps having like all these flashbacks, and then you find out that Bradley Cooper, who's the guy that his body gets transferred into, he gets transferred into Bradley Cooper's body, he finds out that Bradley Cooper was a real person, and he had like a lot of money issues, and he owed people like a lot of money, and so what he did was he basically surrendered his body. Like, they took his soul out of his body and killed him, put his body on like life support, and then they transferred this other guy's soul into it, but part of his soul remained because that's obviously impossible. And so the guy's having all these flashbacks, but they gave him like this medication so that he would never have those flashbacks, but it didn't work. And then ultimately, has a really, really good ending, but the movie is really strange. And he like comes back to his wife because the flashbacks he had were of like his home, and so he travels back and he finds his home, and then his wife comes home and he's just like in there walking around like trying to remember who he is, and she's like super happy, and then she's like really confused, and he's really confused, and she's really beautiful. So it's like, I don't know, man, just deal with it. She seems like a nice gal. Oh, it's because his daughter was sick. I think that's why.
Okay, so I've knitted an inch, and now what I'm gonna do is, let's see, I can't decide if I want to end with my yarn at the beginning or if I want to knit a row. I mean, it's the right length, so what I'm gonna do, oh, you know what, no. So you do end on a knit row. Yeah. So knit your last row. One row isn't really gonna change anything. It's not gonna make it too tall. So knit that row. And then using a backward loop cast on, which is basically holding your yarn as if you're casting on for a long tail cast on, like a regular cast on. And then sticking your needle in and then just releasing it onto the needle. So it's basically just like, it's just adding a new stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5. So my pup's little arms are really small, so I only need to add 5 stitches. So however many stitches you put on a scrap piece of yarn, that's how many stitches that you need to cast on, because essentially we're just creating more material. And then, yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm not at that point yet. I need to knit the rest of the body an inch. Yes. So what I shall do is I shall break this. Kudos for you if you noticed at home that I had skipped that step. I'm sure that was very confusing. So now I'm going to knit an inch, or you can count how many rows you did for the F measurement, how many rows tall you did to create that 1 inch. So I'm going to knit an inch, and then I will be back in a jiffy. So like I said, I wanted to do some increasing, so I've done a couple of rows, and I am going to increase, let's say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. I have 23 stitches on here, which really doesn't make sense. Excuse me. So I have 50, I need to get up to 60 for his biggest point. So I'm going to increase by, let's see, I'm going to increase by 5. I'm going to do a couple more rows, and then I'm going to increase by 5 again, just so that it's not suddenly like this, so that it has a little bit more of a controlled taper. Ooh, and I'm on a purl row. That's not right. That's not lucky. Oh, I can increase on a purl row. If you're making a sweater to keep your dog actually very warm, and you're trying to make a sweater that is very useful, if you take your dog out to pretty cold places, or it gets really cold wherever you are in the winter, and you're actually trying to effectively warm your dog up, I would suggest using some sort of animal fiber, like a wool or something, because the fiber, like, so wool, essentially, it's very, it has a lot of air in it, the strand of yarn does, and so that actually locks in warmth, whereas with like acrylic or man-made fibers, it doesn't do that as well, if at all, really. So if you've ever worn a wool sweater, you're very privy to the fact that it's insanely warm and sometimes itchy, but dogs don't care. So make your dog a wool sweater. You can do a wool acrylic blend, depending on if you can't find a color that you like in a wool yarn, which is silly. But if you want to make something that can get a little wet, I would suggest using superwash merino, because superwash is not as, it doesn't have a negative effect to water as much as wool does, because wool does shrink. So if your dog is goofing around and playing in it and it gets dirty, or heaven forbid they get really wet, it can ruin the sweater. So maybe I shouldn't have suggested wool. Try something that is a washable, a super wash wool or something. So I've knit up 1 inch, and I actually haven't done that other increase. I'm gonna wait until I incorporate my new stitches for those sleeves, like once I do the cast on for the sleeve portion, and then get myself all the way back in the round with my total number of stitches, and then I'm going to increase that last little bit of stitches. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do a backward loop cast on, and I'm going to cast on 5 stitches because that is the number of stitches that I put on hold for my sleeve. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to pull my needle back, and I am going to start knitting in the round. It might be a little tough because, yeah, okay, that was a little tough at first. Okay, and as you can see, I've created just a little square box for his little arm to go in, and then I'm going to knit up the sleeve, and he'll have a little armhole. And remember, there are places where you've broken the yarn because you needed to transition into different spots. So they can be kind of loose because you don't have, the yarn isn't really anchored by anything. So just be careful about that. Try to maintain your tension on those spots, and then obviously you're gonna have to weave in that end later. But just be aware of it for now. I'm gonna add my other stitches for his little armhole. And now I am back to the front, I think I want to say. No. Yes. No. Yeah, okay. So I just added the next armhole, which, which makes me halfway around. I don't really know where the beginning is anymore, but it doesn't really matter. I guess the beginning of where that armhole is, the first armhole, yes. So I'm gonna knit across the back. Yeah, to my first little armhole. I should probably place a marker or something, but I'm a professional. I'm just gonna wing it. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do a couple of rows just to get those backward loop cast on stitches just set up and comfortable. I'm not gonna do an increase row during my first, round, working off of those backward loop cast on stitches. So I'm going to do 2 rounds. I'm going to do another increase row. I just need to add 5 more stitches, and then I'll be at the full bust for my little fella. If you have a dog with a more prominent bust, for example, Bronte has a much bigger chest than Little No Name over here. So I would probably have to do a few more increase rounds rather than as opposed to only doing 1 more increase round on this sweater. So do your increase rounds as you feel are suitable. Maybe do a try-on test, and see if it's fitting your little pal. If you're knitting a sweater for a friend and you don't have the dog handy, or, let's say they're across the country and you just happen to have them measure their dog and you're making them a Christmas sweater or something, then unfortunately you don't get to try on that sweater. But just measure it as you go along. You can see how far it is from the neck to the back so far. So if you actually just do a little SketchUp of the dog, have them take a picture, you can kind of see the contour of the sweater itself as it's going. So you can see that this is small and it's getting bigger, and I'm only 4 inches along. Yeah, my thumb is actually 2 inches, so if you can figure out a body part of you and know exactly how many inches it is, that's really helpful. So I'm only 4 inches along, and I know that his full bust size is, about 4 inches at that point right behind his, no, it should be where his arms are. I don't know what this dog looks like because we've only had him for 19 hours. So anyway, this will fit him fine. He's a funny little bugger. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is so cute. Oh man. Oh man. Okay, anyway, so keep knitting in a circle, do your increases when you need to do them, and then decrease when you need to do that. I mean, it's really best to have the dog with you, because then you can troubleshoot. You don't have to rip anything out. You can literally just put this sweater on the dog. And you have my sympathies if the dog does not want to try on the sweater, because that means that later on they probably won't want to wear the sweater anyway. But my dog is what they think is where the... So Bronte is basically the chief dog that Chihuahuas descended from, and so she is short-haired and she hardly has any fat on her, and so she's cold a lot, and so I have to put sweaters on her constantly because she'll just sit here on the couch trying to sleep, and she'll just... And it's really sad. It's basically like the shake that Chihuahuas do. Shake, shake, shake. I hope you are enjoying this vlog so far, and I hope that this all makes sense. Make sure to use the hashtag that we talked about earlier, Morthunder Dog Sweater Club. And if you have any questions, just post about it, and then I will scan through that hashtag, and if you need any help, I will help you, or hopefully someone else will scan through that hashtag too, and they'll be like, hey, here's what you did wrong. Oh, your armholes are too small or something, and we can all help each other, man, or woman. Oh, hey, little toot toot. I know. Oh, I know. Hello. Good boy. Okay, good boy. Uh-oh. You're far apart. Yeah, okay, go that way. Oh, he's so sleepy. He's so sleepy. Okay, so it fits him perfectly. Okay, so as you can see, oh, okay, so it fits him perfectly. So I'm gonna knit for another inch because that's how big his little chesty is, and maybe 2 inches. I'll evaluate when I sit back down, and then I'll start decreasing a little bit, and then I'll do a rib, and then I will loosely cast off. The stretchiest way that I like to cast off personally is I'll go knit 1, purl 1, cast off, knit 1, cast off, purl 1, cast off. So you're basically just going knit, purl as you cast off, rather than like the traditional knit, cast off, knit, cast off. Okay, so you need 1.5 inches more, and then I'll decrease. Oh, that is so smashing. I think I messed up and I made his armholes way too big, but that's okay. It's his first sweater. The first sweater always looks terrible. Bronte's first sweater looks dumb. Okay. Oh, you're so cute. Oh, you're so cute. I just want to send a picture to your dad. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. Enough of that. Boop. Good boy. You're a very good boy. Yes, you are. Okay, good job. Okay, off we go. Oh, Okay, so now that I've knit for 2 inches, which is my distance from the armpits to where his tummy starts to taper down, I'm going to do my decreases, and then I'm going to knit probably another inch or so, and I'll do another ½ inch. No, I'll do another inch. It's better to be too long than to be too short. Yeah. And then I'll do a ½ inch of ribbing, which is what I did at the neck, and then I'll cast off very loosely. So for my decrease round, I'm only decreasing 8 stitches, which means that I'm going to evenly disperse 8 knit to togethers. So for me, I have 60 stitches, which means 5 times 8 is 40, so 6 times 8 is 48. You know what? I'm gonna lose count if I try and do math, so I'm just gonna wing it.
I used to be so much better at multiplication. When I was in 3rd grade, my teacher nicknamed me the human calculator because I could do the times table really fast, and you could pluck out any equation out of the table and I could do it really well.
And again, if you have a really big dog, don't try and do all your decreases from the biggest point to the smallest point, aka measurement B to C, all in one row. Don't do it all in one row. Try and do it probably in 2 rows. If you have a really big dog, 3 rows, because you're likely going from, you're probably taking away many inches, like 3 or 4 inches, and you really shouldn't do that in 1 row or else it'll look really clunky. So disperse it out, take away 1 inch each like decrease row that you do, so that you can, if you have to do 4 inches, do 4 rows, but not back to back. Do 1 decrease row, then knit, let's say 3 rows, 2 rows, depending on how long the dog's torso is. I don't know I don't know what kind of dog I'm describing here, but you know your dog. You know what your dog looks like. And like I said, it never hurts to do a try-on test. Yeah, that makes sense. It never hurts to do a try-on test. Unless your dog bites, then give him a treat. Give him or her a treat. And if all else fails, it's better to do it just a little too loose. For example, the sweater that Bronte was wearing at the beginning of this video was a little loose around her tummy, and you know, it's not hurting her at all. She doesn't step in it or anything. It just hangs a little bit. The only thing that you'd be missing out on is just a little bit of warmth, because it's not touching her tummy like the rest of the material is. Okay, so I have successfully bound off all my stitches in a knit one, purl one fashion so that it's a little stretchy. So I'm going to cut my yarn, I'm going to tie a nice little knot, and I'm going to worry about weaving in my ends later. Alright, so now we basically have a little tube with a couple holes in it. So what we are going to do is we're going to go to the first armhole where you have these stitches still sitting on scrap yarn, and then you have the sides are where your rows are from when you knit an inch, and then the top is where you casted on those stitches for the top of the arm. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to cut the scrap yarn, and I'm going to slowly take it off each stitch as I put it on the needle. Do, 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 do. It might be a little tight, but there you go. So I have 5 stitches, and then I'm gonna pick up 5 stitches up the side, and then I'm going to pick up 5 stitches across the top, and then finish it off with 5 stitches on the side again, totaling in 20 stitches. And since it's such a small amount, I'm going to use a magic loop, which is what I've been doing this whole time. You may have noticed that, yeah, you have quite a few ends that you're going to have to weave in at the end, but I mean, that just kind of comes with making a sweater that has so many moving parts. So, okay, 1, 2, 3. So if you don't know how to pick up a stitch, you're essentially just putting your needle into your work and you have your yarn in the back. You're yarning over and then you're bringing that yarn over back through. So if you crochet, it should be really easy to pick up on this. Okay, so once you have all of your stitches picked up around the armpit hole, you're gonna basically just knit up as far as you want your sleeve to be. You can do a short little ribbed, just a cap sleeve. If your dog has really short stubby legs like mine, you may consider doing that. For Bronte, I usually knit about 1 inch and then I do a short amount of ribbing and then a really loose cast off. So pick your poison, it's up to you. Kind of depends on where you live, where your dog usually ends up traversing. So if your dog likes to step in mud a lot, I would consider doing shorter sleeves. If your dog stays inside and is a chilly little thing, you might even do longer sleeves, which I might want to consider for little brother. Oh no, I think I just dropped one. I don't know though. No, I didn't. Okay. Did I? I don't know. So I finished my first sleeve. Second sleeve done.
Now you need to turn it inside out and weave in all of those ends before you reward yourself with putting it on your dog. Because if you put it on your dog before you weave in all the ends, you're gonna not want to take it off of him because he's gonna be so freaking cute, and then he's gonna look stupid because he's gonna have all these ends hanging off of him. So weave in your ends. Do it now. Do it now.
Unless, you know, you're still back at the knitting 1 inch part because your dog is probably bigger than my teacup Chihuahua. Which feels really weird saying that out loud. I have a teacup Chihuahua.
I have a teacup Chihuahua. I have a teacup Chihuahua.
Oh gosh. I just need you to know that when I filmed this episode, like I said earlier, I've had this dog for less than 24 hours, so it's still just like, oh, still so exciting. Put it on right? Right? That's not backwards, is it? And that is how you make a custom fit sweater for your favorite furry critter. Also, during the filming of this video, my husband and I decided that we're gonna name this dog Remo. I think that's how you pronounce the name that he texted me. And if it's not, then his name is probably not gonna be that name, because the alternative is Remo, and I don't like that. Yeah.